Okay, so I'm going to do a video here on how to animate a segment door. I want to point out that this is by no means perfect. It's a method that I've been playing around with it pretty much all day, well, most of the day, trying to get it better and better, but I think I've got it about as best as I can get it. And I wanted to share that with you guys. You may be able to get something from it. You may be able to improve upon it, whatever, right? So let's just see what we can do here. So I've got a lot of parts in my outliner here. So I've got collisions, screws, and various different parts. And I've left them there because I want to show you, once you have the animation all created, how to set those up as a child-parent hierarchy so they will follow along with everything else, okay? But the actual parts that we're going to be animated are the segments themselves, and then the other parts will be a child of those animated sections. So what I'm going to do first of all is move all the parts that I don't want to animate into a new collection so that they don't cause any issues by me misclicking something and animating the wrong parts. So I'm going to take, let's see, these, this one. Just going to move all of this stuff which I don't need. I don't really need that or that. So we're going to take all of those, new collection, and we'll just call this other, whatever, it doesn't matter, and click OK. And then I can hide that collection, right? So I just have this, which is the parts that I need to work with to make it all animate and everything else. So obviously this won't have an animation on it, but I need that to be there so I can check that it is actually following along where I need it to follow and all that sort of stuff, or as best as it will do anyway. So what I'm going to do is, because these segments are going to be following in this track here, this channel, whatever you want to call that, gutter, whatever it is, I'm going to use that to help me create my curve so that I don't have to try and create one myself that might not match anything, So if I come into anywhere in here and just go into edit mode, I'm just going to do Control R to put a loop cut in here. And I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm just going to do Shift D and right mouse click to cancel the move, P and separate by selection, go back into object mode. Let me turn on my screencast keys so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. And I'm going to select this one here. Don't need the weighted normal on this one, so I'm just going to remove it. Doesn't need it. We'll do F2, and I'm just going to call it curve because that's what it's going to be, right? Currently it's still geometry, but I want to convert this to a curve. So I'm going to right click, convert to curve. I'm going to go into edit mode, select this vertex down the bottom, Shift S, cursor to selected, go back into object mode. Now I have lots of add-ons, so I have different pie menus and things like that, but figure out how to do that yourself with whatever you've got. Let me turn on my move gizmo thing so you can see what's going on, and then I'm going to right click, set origin to 3D cursor, right? So I want to zero this on the y-axis so it's in the center here, but not on the x, because it needed to follow that channel on this construction piece here, right? So I just want to zero on the y so it's in the center. And the reason why I want to do that is because where the curve is at the moment, if I was to set this to that curve, this would shift over to the left. From this perspective, it would shift over to here because it will use the center of mass as the origin. No matter where I actually put the origin, it will just use the center of mass of the object and shift it over. So I need to put the curve in the center down the zero line on the y. So I'm just going to do n item on the y, 0 to put it in the middle, okay? So what I want to do is, in this particular scenario, I'm going to use empties to create my initial path animation. And hopefully as I go through this, you'll really understand why I've used empties, because I find that it works much better than trying to actually control the path animation on the actual object itself. So I use empties to do this, right? So I'm going to create some empties. So I'm just going to select my collection, Shift A, empty, plane axes, and I want to put that on the center. So let's do Shift S to origin, Shift S, selected to cursor. And I'm just going to do Shift D, right click to cancel the move. And I'm going to do that until I get as many as I need here. So I want 8 in total. So 0 to 8, or 0 to 7 I should say, which is fine, which gives me 8. And we can rename those. So I'll just do in here, we'll just do part 01, okay? And we'll take that, copy that, go to this one, and we can do part 02. This one here, part 03, part 04, part 05, part 06, part 07, and last part 08. Okay. So now we've got that, we need to set these up with a object constraint, which is going to follow this curve. Okay. So we're going to, let's do this one here, it doesn't really matter. We'll start at part 01. We're going to go to constraints, follow path. We're going to select our curve. Okay. Now what you might find here is if I was to play around with the offset, nothing is happening currently. That empty is not moving from where it is at the moment, right? So if I set it back to 0, select my curve and go into edit mode and then go back to object mode, select my empty, now it will move. Okay. But what we will find here is it's going the wrong way. I want this at 0 to be down the bottom. So I'm going to select my curve, go into edit mode, with everything selected, segments, and switch the direction. And now it's down the bottom where I need it to be. So if I go to here, and now if I drag this, it's going to go in the right direction from 0. It's a negative value, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. Right. So that's all good. And then what we can do is basically just take all of these, shift select all of those. So 1 to 8 and copy to selected. They will all now have the same, and they will all move in however they need to move, right? So we need to set up our specific offset for each of the different segments, right? So part 1, let's go to part 01. We'll go into side view, Z and wireframe. You can also do that up here. And we're going to set this up in the right position. And we want this to be on the center of the caster here. This can be a bit of a pain to set up, but you just have to kind of work with it and, go with it. So we'll just kind of do this, zoom in. We want to get it as close as we can to where it needs to be in the center here. You might need to play around with the values a little bit here. So this needs to be 1, 9, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5. Yeah, something like that, right? You just need to play around with the values until you get it somewhere in the center here. Okay. Let's zoom back out again. And then we'll go to part 02 and set our offset for this one. So this one needs to be up here. You can hold down shift to make it move a little bit slower, but it's still, the further you zoom in, the more jumpy it gets. Because obviously, you're zoomed in, but, again, it is what it is. Let's do 02, 2, 3, yeah, so you want 2, 05, 9, 2, 1, 5, 3, 2, 1, 5. Why did it do that? Now it's going to put it back to 0. I hate it when it does that. I need to zoom out again, aren't I? Let's zoom out again so I can get it. So I can see it because it's moving too fast. hate it when it does that. Well, it's not, it's me doing it, really, but I still hate it when it happens. Let's try and get this close as I can. Like that. I have this before I think that's probably about as close as I'm going to get that. That looks pretty good. That's fine. So let's zoom back out again. Go 03 and set this one in the right place. What I might do here is, I don't know whether to pause or not. Very difficult sometimes when I'm making a video. You know, I don't want to bore you all to death. At the same time, I want to show you what's needed to be done because it's important that you get it right. So let's do do 08 9 2. I think that's probably about right there. Something like that. Zoom back out again. We'll go 04. Let's move this one up to somewhere like that. A bit closer. Now, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, this is the only way to do this. You can't cheat this by putting the cursor on a point and then snapping it because it doesn't work. I think that one actually might be pretty damn close. I'm going to leave it at that one. That's fine. Not lucky with that one. 5 to here somewhere. Zoom in. Fine tune it. Let's do going the wrong way, I think. 5 and 1 and 5. I think what the best that be. I think that's going the wrong way, isn't it? Going up. Brain freeze. 0. No. Ugh. I don't get this to work. I want it to work. Very annoying. Go to here. Gone. Two, 4, 5. Okay. 8, 5, 8, 8. No. I think that's about as close as I'm going to get that one. That's fine though. That should work okay. It's fine. I want to get it pretty close. Doesn't have to be bang on, but as close as you possibly can get it. Let's zoom back into here. Hold down shift, drag it up. Get it pretty close and then fine tune it. Every time I do this, I go the wrong way every single time. It's so annoying. 5, 8. That looks like 5, 7, 8. Six. Yeah, something like that. I'll do. There we go. Pretty close. And 7. This one up here. See if I make the mistake again this time. So let's do yep, 1, 8. 7 and 6, 8. There we go. That'll do. Pretty close. And then number 8. Put that here. 7, 8. 3. Zoom in a bit more. 2, 8. Pretty close. I think that'll do there. That should be fine. Okay. So now we have all of those set up in the right place. Go back into object mode. Or in, sorry, not in object mode, solid mode. I can click on my curve. If I go to my curve properties here, path animation, make sure there's a tick in the box. If I now drag this, my empties are going along the curve, right? Awesome. So now this is where we need to actually do our child-parent hierarchy for the segments so that they are parented to the empties, right? So what we're going to do then is let's do, we'll save it, let's power save, and just go down here. We're going to do 01, part 01. You can do this in the outliner here. You can do it here if you want to. So you would select this one. It's a little bit different when you do it here than it is in the outliner. Here I would select the segment, shift select this, control P and then object. If you do it in the outliner, you need to select this one first and then control select this one. A little bit different, right? But let's do it in here instead. So we'll select that one, shift select that one, control P, object. You want to make sure that the segment is a child of the empty, okay? So if you find that the empty becomes a child of the segment, the door segment, you've done it the wrong way around. So we'll select that one, shift select that one, control P, object. This one, this one. I'm going to do these real quick here. One, control P, object. Okay, so now if I go back to my curve, and my path animation, door segments are all following, but they're not rotating as they should be. They're all just sticking up, which is obviously not what I want to do, right? So now I need to do a track constraint on the door segments themselves so that they follow the relevant empty of the next one up, which is why we have this number 8 up here. It's not got a segment in it, a door segment, but it's needed so this door segment has something to track to. Okay, so let's take this one here. We're going to go into constraints, damp track on the z-axis, and we use the eyedropper to select that one. Take this one here, damp track, z-axis. This one is going to follow that one. Amp track, z-axis. So this one would follow part 04, okay? And this one here, amp track, z-axis, is going to follow this one, part 05. This one here, amp track, z-axis, is going to follow part 06. This one here, amp track, z-axis, will follow part 07, which is the empty, as I say. Amp track, z-axis is this one here, part 08, right? So now if I go back to my curve, go to my curve properties, and then do it, now you can see they actually rotate correctly around that curve. Perfect, right? So now we need to set up the actual animations themselves. So what we need to do here then is with our curve selected, we're going to keyframe the path animation. So I'm going to open up a new window, go to my timeline, and I want 1 to 100, which is what I've got here, 100 frames. If you go more than that, it's fine, but the door will move very slowly. So 100 frames for me, I think, is perfectly fine for a door opening speed. Now, as far as FarmSim 22 goes, when you set it up in the animation XML, you have a multiplier in there. So you can actually put in a particular multiplier, and that will then speed up the animation if it's too slow. Okay, but I think 100 frames here is more than adequate and will be, fast enough for the door, so it's not too fast and it's not too slow. For me, it works really well, but you can obviously experiment with whatever you've got set up to get whatever you want out of it, right? So let's see. So what I'm going to do then is on keyframe 1, don't start at 0, you want to start at keyframe 1. We're going to, actually what I'll do first of all, let's power save, always save. We're going to keyframe evaluation time, so we'll insert keyframe. We're going to go to 100, and then I'm going to basically move this to wherever I want it to be. I know that it's 52. Okay, as I say, I've done this a few times now. But you want to make sure that it's in a position that looks good for you. Wherever these are going to be positioned, I think that looks pretty good. The door is now open. It's not gone far, not off the end of the track or anything, and it all looks pretty good. And the door is fully open. Looks good, right? So we right click, insert keyframe. If I now go back to the beginning, press play, and my door opens, right? Pretty good. I think that looks pretty good. Right, so as far as Blender goes, this is done. The animation works, it's all good, excellent. But if I was to try and export this out now, the Giants editor will not know what the hell I want it to do, because it does not understand what object constraints are. It has no idea what a damp track constraint is or a follow path constraint. It doesn't know what those are. So we need to bake this animation data to the individual parts here. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to basically select these. Doesn't really matter which way I do it around, to be honest with you, but I'll just do from bottom to top like so, and select all of those. And I'm going to go object, animation, bake action, and we'll start at frame 1, end at frame 0, frame step. Now this is something that you have to kind of experiment with a bit to get the desired result that you want out of it. 1 might be too many, 10 might not be enough, because it's the distance that it's going to mark. So if you have like a distance of 10 frames between each keyframe, you might find that this will go off the back a little bit and not do what you want it to do. So that's something that you would have to decide for yourself. Okay, so I think the highest number I ever do is 4. I don't do anything above 4, because I find that if I go anything above 4, as soon as I put it in the Giants editor, it goes bonkers and goes wherever it chooses to go and doesn't follow the track that I want it to follow. And that's not just relevant to this particular animated door. That's all animations that I've ever done in Blender for FarmSim 22. That isn't an issue with Blender or the Giants editor or Farming Simulator. It's just the way that the animation clip source is generated, and how they interpret those values, right? Now, as far as Blender goes, it will fill in certain blanks. If I cancel that, because as you can see, if I go to the curve, I've got a keyframe here and a keyframe here, nothing in between, but the animation works because Blender in the background is filling all of that in for me. It's doing that calculation, that mathematical calculation for me to work out where everything needs to be, in relation to the constraints that I have applied to it, or set on it, added to it, whatever. It's using the constraints and everything else to keep everything where it needs to be. So it doesn't need any more than those 2 keyframes to make it work, because it has those constraints to keep everything intact. But the Giants engine or the Giants editor, or wherever you want to look at it, doesn't have that. So it needs to be told specifically where these objects are going to be at any given time in the animation. So you need to make sure that you have enough keyframes for that to work, okay? Because otherwise it won't know what to do, and it will then skip a beat, and you might find that it will get discombobulated and start doing things that you didn't want it to do. So for me, I generally, as I say, never go above 4 on the actual frame steps. So that's again up to you, but just to bear in mind, the more frames that you have, the more keyframes that you have, that is an animation. It's a request or an action that's being taken part. The engine is having to obviously make that happen, right? So if you put too many in there and you have a lot of these in a certain, within a certain distance of each other, and they're all working at the same time, which theoretically wouldn't be possible unless you had all of the doors run off of one trigger, which why would you want to do that in the first place? I have no idea, but it might be a thing. I don't think that it would cause too many problems, but it's just something to bear in mind, because it is an action that the game engine is having to perform. And in a more complex animation, you might find that the more keyframes that you have, especially unnecessary keyframes, might be more taxing on the engine, and that would cause drops in frames per second. So just experiment with it a little bit and see what works for you, and go with enough but not more than you need, is what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm actually going to set this, I might just do 2 in this case, just so that I for this I want to make sure that the animation works 100% here. So I'm just going to do 2, no big deal, right, in this, because it's just me doing this, but I want to have it looking as best as it can be in this scenario. But again, that's something you would have to experiment with to get the best out of it without having unnecessary keyframes. So we want to do visual keying, because basically I'm telling I'm asking Blender, I'm requesting from Blender to take the animation that's being set up on the track with all of the different constraints, to evaluate the values from this geometry, and then take those visual location rotation values and apply those as keyframes. So we want to use visual keying, right? I want to clear the constraints, because as I've mentioned already, Blender has no idea what a damp track constraint is, or a follow path constraint. It doesn't know what they are. So we want to clear those out so that Blender, the Giants engine doesn't need those. So why keep them? Because they won't work anyway, right? So we want to clear those constraints, and we also want to clear the parents, because I no longer want these empties to be a part of this. I just want the segments to have their animation to be animated without the requirement of these empties, because In this particular scenario, I have a follow path on the empty, but the damp track is on the geometry, the segments. So I want to clear those parents, right? Because it won't work otherwise because of that, the way that I've set it up with a constraint on an empty and a constraint on the actual object, the segment, they're working together here, but they wouldn't be able to work outside of Blender in that respect. So we want to clear the parents as well. So visual keying, clear constraints, clear parents, and we're going to bake the data to the object, right? We're doing object data bake, not a pose. We're not using any bones at all in this case, right? So we're just going to click OK, right? And now we have our keying. We have all of our keyframes all set up, and it has done exactly what I asked it to do. It's removed all the constraints. Now the empties still have theirs because they are not part of that bake process, right? In that sense, well they are, but they're not. How can I explain this? Because it's cleared them out of the parent, they are. Yeah, that's a difficult one to explain why. Well, just to say that they are no longer required. Let's just put it that way, right? The animation data is now baked into these individual segments, so these are no longer required, so it doesn't matter. You can basically just now delete those. They are no longer a factor. Even the curve is no longer a factor. And I'll prove that by just deleting them. So if I come to here, shift select from the curve down to the empty R08, okay? I'm just going to do X and delete. I now go to here and press play. The animation still works. They are no longer required, so that's, they're out of the equation, so to speak. Right, so that's all good. We've now got all of the parts we want there. Awesome. So now that we've got that, we need to set all the other parts up. So what I would generally do here then is Shift S, cursor to origin, Shift A, empty. Let me just make sure I'm on the right collection here. Shift A, empty plane axes. And then I would just name this whatever. So we'll do F2 and we'll just do segment door 01, okay. And then we just want to basically put all of that into here. So we're just going to go down like this one. I'm just control clicking all of those in the outliner, control P and object. And now they are all a child of that transform group. So I can move that around, or empty in this case, as far as Blender's concerned. But I can move all of those around and it won't cause any issues with the animation, right? So if I was to go GY and put it over there, the animation would still work, okay? So that's why I do that, right? So let's just put it back where it was. But now what we want to do is put all of these into the appropriate places as well. So we're just going to take all of those, drag them, put them into that collection. Then we can delete that one. Oops, wrong one. What did I delete? Always doing it. Deleting somewhere I don't want to delete. Let's right click, delete that one. That's fine. So now what we want to do then is we want to put the collisions into the right places. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, that's fine. Should be good. So if I select the collision here, control click on this one. So that's the collision for segment 01. Control P object. Take this one. Control click on part 02. Control P object 3. Control click object 04. We don't want that one. So I'll do that again just to make sure I've got the right one. There we go. Control P object. This one to this one. Control P object. Control P object. This one. Control P object. Okay. Do the same for the screws. So this one. Control P object. On this one. This is a good idea to have. Always a good idea to have things named appropriately so that You're not guessing what goes with what. I know part 05 screws goes with part 05 segment, right? Or segment 05 or whatever you want to call it. So it's important that things are named appropriately. Doesn't matter what they're named as long as they make sense to you, right? So that's all good. And then as far as everything else goes here, I can take all of these and do that, Control P and object, and now everything is contained within that transform group, right? So I can move that wherever I want. If I do GY, actually let's just do it from here first. Animation is all working, everything is following along, the screws, the collisions, everything. If I do GY, move it over here and press play, all the animation still works, right? So just easier that way. So now if I was to put this on a building, chances are the door would not be here, that this would be the inside of the building, the door might be over here, and I would be able to go GX, move the door where I want it to be, right, press play, and the door would still work. Well, I wouldn't press play, I would press, whatever I would press in game, the left mouse button, and then the animation would be activated and the door would work. Hopefully, fingers crossed and all that, so yeah. And then as far as exporting this out, what you would need to do, or what I would probably do here, is I would have this split up. So I wouldn't have it set up this particular way, because I wouldn't need, in the animated part, I wouldn't need the screws or this or this or this. But for the non-animated part, obviously I would want it to be contained together somehow. So that's something you'd have to kind of, figure out what would work best for you on that side of things. But yeah, so then, is what it is, right? So just to show you that the animation does actually work in the Giants editor, we'll export it out and then we'll see what happens. So we go here. Now, again, I've done this already, so I know it works, but I'm just going to walk you through what is required to get it to work, because the way that Blender sets its animations, you will have action bake on this one. This one will be, action 001. This one is action. This one is action 002, action 003, action 004, 5, and then 6. It creates a completely separate animation action for all of the individual parts. And that won't work very well as far as the animated door goes when you want to get it into FarmSim 22. So we need to combine those animations together. And I've not found a way to do that in Blender. There probably is a way, but I just don't know how to do it. So this is the way that I make it work. So when we open this up, by default, the binary files checkbox here will be ticked. And you want to uncheck that, okay? And then we'll go down to here. Again, use Blender file name will be checked. You want to uncheck that, and then find your location wherever you want to save it. So we'll just put it in here. That's fine. So we'll just call this segment door 01, right? And then set the i3D. And I want to export everything. So we're just going to do export all. Now I don't have any materials, textures or anything on this, so it is what it is. So we'll go into here. We're going to right click on the i3D and edit this with Notepad++. You can use whatever text editor you want. I'm using Notepad++, obviously. We're going to scroll all the way down here until we get to the animation section down the bottom. Right. So it will say animation, animation sets, animation set, and so on and so on. You call this whatever you want. So we'll just call this segment door 01. And we'll just copy that and paste it into there, and we'll just do underscore source, right? Whatever. I should just put a capital on those. Doesn't really matter, but that's fine. So we've got segment door 01, segment door 01 underscore source, right? But if I scroll down, you'll see we've now got a new animation set. We don't want that because it's basically, like I said, in Blender, it's creating a new action for each individual door section. We want to combine them all together. So what I'm going to do here is select clip, shift select down to clip here, so clip to clip, and we're going to delete it. And now this node is contained within the single animation set, right? This one here. We can scroll down and do the same. We do clip, clip, delete, go down, clip, delete. Keep going down, so clip to clip, delete. Until we get to the bottom, right? And we can go ahead and save it. Close all of that. Open this up. And with your animation window open, so you just go window and then animation, and it'll pop up wherever it pops up. Might be different location for you, but once you get that, okay. So if we click on this piece here, you can see we've got segment door 01 and our source, clip source name, segment door 01 underscore source. And that will be the same for every single one of these, okay. But what matter which one I click on here, any one of them, I can run the animation. So I can just press play and there goes the animation, okay. I can click on part 01, press play, and the animation plays. Okay, so that's pretty much how you go about setting that up. Obviously now what I would need to do is go into here and set all the parts up. So it would be rigid body, kinematic, and then non-renderable, and then do that for all of the collisions. So collision, rigid body, kinematic. It needs to be kinematic because it's a moving object. You leave it as static, it will give you errors. Collision, rigid body, kinematic, non-renderable, rigid body, kinematic, renderable. But you want to make sure that, you know, before you actually make them non-renderable, just make sure that they are actually moving with everything else. They haven't got disconnected somehow. They shouldn't do, but you never know with these things. Kinematic, non-renderable, and this one, rigid body, kinematic, non-renderable. Okay, and that's pretty much that. So now you have a door, and obviously you need to kind of work with all this stuff here and put it into whatever kind of setup you wanted it to be, and kind of go from there. And then, you know, set your collision mask, sorry, not collision mask, clip distance. So you might want maybe, I don't know, anything between 300 to 500 on the main door sections here. Up to you what you set it to, but I wouldn't go too high. Don't need to see this from across the other side of the map. So something like this. Okay. And then perhaps maybe your screws, I would say something like 50 is more than enough for that. So we can copy that, then come into our screws at distance of 50 on those. Right. These ones as well. Then again, like things like this, that doesn't need to be that high. So again, this is actually indoors inside the building. You may even be able to go like as low as 100 on something like that. you know, 150 maybe. I don't know, up to you again. That's something you'd have to decide. You might go 150 and then 150 on that, and so on and so on, right? And just kind of, you know, whatever. Yeah, and then you've got all your parts, and your animation is doing what it needs to do, right? Looks pretty good. So yeah, as far as that goes now, you know, things like this, this, that, and that would not be required in the animated part. The static part they would be, but the animated part you would not have those. The only parts you would have are the segments, and that's the part that would be dynamically loaded into the or overlaid or whatever you want to call it for the the static part, I guess. Well, it's kind of difficult to explain because I don't truly understand whether it replaces it with these or just controls it. But either way, you wouldn't have any of these pieces. You would have, you know, just the door section. I think that the door segments, but there's, you know, that's entirely up to you. There's no reason why you couldn't have all these other parts. That would be up to you how you wanted to do that. But yeah, so anyway, that's pretty much that. And then to actually finalize it all off, let me just collapse all of that. I'll delete the light. Okay. And then all to just finalize it off, I would just basically save it and then just do File, Save As, select this and go binary i3D, because we now need to binarize, if that's even a word, to create our shapes file and anim file. Okay, we go binary i3D and save. We want to replace it. We're going to close it. If we come back here now, you can see that we have a shape file and an anim file. Okay, and that's pretty much what we need to have. And now I can no longer edit those animations. So you need to make sure that they are working 100% correct in all ways, and everything is set up how you want it to be set up before you do that. Because once you do it, there's no way to undo it. You'd have to export it back out again. But now I can, you know, just reopen it again and double check that it's all working, which it should be. No errors in the outliner or whatever your console, I mean. And we go to here, press play, animation's working. Okay. So that's pretty much, you know, how I would go about, or how I, if I can actually talk, how I have gone about setting up path animation for door segments in a roller door. I don't know what you would call that. Is it a segment door, sectional door, whatever? Right, it is what it is. Yeah, it's an animation. So take it as it is, I guess. I don't know. I've done this like 20 times now. I don't want to do it no more. Trying to get it to work properly, and it's finally, yay. Uh, so yeah, I think it looks pretty good though. It's come out okay. You know, I know there are other ways to do this with drivers and things like that. I may have already mentioned it in Blender. I don't know how to use those. I haven't got a clue. So yeah, this is the only way I've been able to make it work, and it works. So you know, as far as that goes, I'm quite pleased with that result. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.